Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash, as well as the latest episode of Black Lightning. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you don't want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I have to say about this week's episode of The Flash, you can skip to what I have to say about this week's episode of Black Lightning. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of The Flash, a fantastic episode. This episode was so beautifully done. Essentially, this entire episode took place over like a majority of it takes place over the course of essentially 8 minutes. 9-ish kind of roughly, but it's like, that is incredible. Basically, a nuclear bomb is going to go off and it's going to destroy all of Central City. And Barry goes into what, Cisco dubs Flashtime, what he did with Iris, where basically everything looked like it was standstill. And he brought Iris into like kind of his speed. So she moves just as fast as he does. So it almost looks like everything is standing still. And basically Barry's got all that time. He joins up with both Jesse and Jay. And what's kind of interesting was the fact that Jay was like, how the hell are you doing this, kid? I don't know whether he's saying that as someone is like, oh, because I've been doing this such a long time. It took me a long time to learn that. And you've already mastered like this whole flash time thing. I don't know whether it's that or whether he's talking about the fact is that Barry's bringing other people into his like flash time, because that might not be something every speedster can do. I mean, you see Jessie trying to do it later on. I don't know whether it's something that she just can't do yet because she hasn't practiced it long enough. Or is it a situation of, is it just because she was super tired at the time when she was trying to bring Harry in it? Or could, like, Jay have been talking about the fact that it's just, like, how powerful his flash time is. Like, probably, like they're entering into the flash time. That, like, essentially when he does flash time, he creates, like, this gigantic time bubble of like basically he's moving, like he creates this space of him moving so fast that everything feels like it's standing still. And maybe when Jay and Jesse entered it, they're like, whoa, you like, this is very powerful. Like, I don't know how to, like, which way to interpret that. Either way, it was such a beautifully done aspect of the episode, because to me it added such tension to the episode, because it's like, even though they're moving so fast, they're trying to come up with so many ideas about like, what can we do about this whole situation. He has Cisco, he gets Killer Frost's help, he gets help from Harry, which Harry's like, yo, throw it in the Speed Force. It's like, oh, the Speed Force might be able to survive it, which Jay's like, no, don't do that, because if you do that, you're gonna mess with the speed of every speedster, good and bad, across all of time will be messed with if you destroy the speed, because the Speed Force won't be able to survive that. He even talk about the fact is that it's an entity that is literally almost kind of like an important part, almost probably, I guess the argument could be like like at least one of the backbones, maybe pillars might be a better word, pillars that kind of keeps the multiverse together. And it's like, you destroy that, because for one, that would mean every speedster, like I said, across time. So, which we know for one thing, I was like, let's not forget, Barry has a grandson in the future who's a speedster too. So, I mean, that would kind of make everything fall apart, because it's like, well, for one, you already have Wally off with the Legends, so that would kind of suck in his situation. But what does that mean for like Barry? It's like, oh, that means at some point in Barry's timeline, all like his powers would disappear and basically undo all the people he's ever saved as a Flash. It's stuff like that you have to think about, just like the domino effects of timelines and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure it'd be almost like a paradox situation of time kind of collapsing on itself, because it was like Barry wouldn't have his powers to get to where he is now, so that's something like that. But an element I thought would have been really interesting in the episode, it never went to this, but I thought it was going to be like, oh, Barry's going to have to turn to the one person he never want to turn to, DeVoe. I thought he would have to go to him, just because DeVoe's mind of thinking, maybe he could think of a way out of this situation, but it never turned to that. I thought that was going to be Barry's last hope, but turns out not to be the case. But I like so many interesting things about this flash time. For one, there's a limit to it. Like, even speedsters can only push their bodies to go so far. Like, they could keep going, but even it drains for them, because Jay was the first one. He's like, I'm not as fast as I used to be, so it's kind of taking its toll on it, and it kind of wore him out. Barry was like, take it first. Next, it was Jesse, and then it was Barry, like, it took everything Barry had not to completely, like, give out with that whole situation, So even it can't be done forever, but like, I guess if it's done in spurts, it's okay. But if you do it for long periods of time, because like, there's no telling how long they were in like flash time. Like, they were bouncing around ideas, dashing all over the place. Like, could have been hours. For all we know, they literally could have been in there for like days, weeks, or months. And to me, that always plays into what I'm talking about how like I've come to appreciate speedsters so much because time for them, like this is us getting a window into what it's like as a speedster when it's like, oh yeah, we see little bits at it, but I think we've never seen it to such a grand scale before. I mean, we've seen Flashtime before because like I think I recently talked about it. It was like the whole, I forgot I was discussing it with about something. Maybe it wasn't in a video, but it was the whole aspect of like in the crossover when Barry's fighting Eobard, they're technically fighting in Flashtime because everybody and everything else is completely frozen while they're fighting. I mean, to be fair, that kind of fits the whole aspect of speedsters, but I guess like it's something you don't ever really think about because when you see them dashing, you're just assuming like everything else is moving slowly, but in Flashtime, it seems like everything's moving so slow. I mean, their power is basically, I would assume Flashtime is them pushing their powers to the max. It's like at Flashpoint and not Flashpoint, Flashtime, it's like we're moving as fast as we possibly can. That's why I feel like it puts such a big strain on their bodies. But it also seems like it affects humans too. Like a normal human, unless you're a speedster, you can't keep up those speeds for long because it started affecting everyone else immediately. But it's interesting, like no one's abilities would work because like Cisco's powers represent like opening a tear in like, you know, space and time because he's moving so fast. There's no point for like a rip to open because they're moving so fast. Like it can't get enough time to open. And it's just, that's incredible to think about. Frost's abilities wouldn't work, I guess, because like, I guess in a sense, because they were moving so fast, like it wasn't enough for her to fully generate her powers. Like they didn't really explain her situation, but it was fascinating to me how that whole situation worked. I mean, like I said, it makes you realize just like, holy crap, like seconds can be hours to its speedster. It's crazy just how fast it can be. Okay, why don't we go back in time? And Barry's like, no, I literally already had to deal with it. I know the consequences of going back in time. It's like, oh yeah, you think it's fine then. Yeah, we're trying to save the city. I get it. But at the same time, it's like, you don't know the consequences that will come about that. It'll change the lives of the people that you love and care about, as well as a lot of things. Like unforeseen consequences will come about because of that. So, but what was the ultimate solution? And it was something that Iris came up with. It's like lightning rod. It's like, you need to generate lightning to possibly deal with the situation. It's like the Speed Force storms. The storm that had came about when Barry initially, you know, when the Speed Force was coming to get him, it's like, oh, we could do that. There's that spirit that's inside the Speed Force that makes it think that Barry's still in there. So Barry dashes in there, grabs it, runs out with the Speed Force channeling after him. It's an interesting thing because when Barry comes running out the Speed Force, the lightning's right behind him and it's going past like Joe and all these other people. And I'm like, and I also appreciate it's just a little minute detail. I don't know if you know, like if they had shown it before, but you can also tell like time had moved a little bit more since Barry had gone because the people were initially on their knees with their hands behind their head. You see some of them kind of flown forward but kind of stuck. So time had advanced a little bit. I don't know if it had advanced enough prior to that. It just seemed like in that particular scene it was kind of showing like a slight thing of like, oh yeah, like time has advanced since Barry's doing it because he's slowly like losing his grip on his flash time. So, but and then just him like slowly turning onto the car and running on it and then tossing it. I was like, that is so badass. I appreciate that. So that's so good. And luckily, the plan went out without a hitch. The storm hit and dealt with it. What's interesting though is the fact is that like what I was bringing up is I'm surprised it had no ramifications for someone like Joe or something. I also thought it was kind of sweet that like he was going to try and talk to Joe, but he was like, nah, I think he's like the person I need to talk to the most is Iris. So it's probably like in his moment being like sorry, I'm thinking he's probably thinking like sorry that if I don't do anything, I can't save any of us. I didn't take time to say anything to you. So but he ends up, you know, kind of talking to Iris and they literally had a conversation about how they never spent any quality time together and everything. But dude, that was so, like I said, it was such a beautifully done episode. And I love that the entirety of the episode was about that. About, like I said, those moments, that time, which was most likely like literally seconds. Literally most of this episode takes place over the course of seconds. And that's insane and amazing. And it makes me literally, as the name of this channel like implies, nerdgasm like crazy. It was like, that is so fucking cool. Like, that is like the pinnacle of awesomeness in a superhero show. That is like amazingly awesome. It's just, I got super giddy, but I was like, yeah, the entire time I was watching it. I get super hyped. Like you get a taste of it in these recordings, but like if you were to watch it alongside of me, you'd be just hearing me just losing my shit in moments like that. It's so amazing. So luckily everything ended. Everyone is good. A lot of other storylines we got to talk about. For one, Jay's talking about he's calling it quits a little bit, because for him it's like, oh, find something else. I mean, right now it's like his main focus is teaching another speedster. It's like, oh, there's another speedster on your earth, and it's like, yeah, I'll retire once she's done. It's like, oh, who's the speedster? Which maybe it has to deal with that mysterious girl we see at the end of the episode, which she's popping up. Which I'm like, come on, this is her third appearance in the show so far. Technically, it's the second appearance, because I brought this up when I was talking about, because I actually did a video recently. If you want to, you can check it out. Basically, it's like Flash Girl : Mysterious Girl Thoughts and Theories, about who her identity is and what her role is and stuff like that. Nevertheless, I'm not going to. If you want to, you can check out the video. I'll probably include a link in the description. Below, like the times for the episode, so in case you want to check that out. But essentially, because I brought it up in that, like, because technically the first episode she popped up in was during the crossover, and that was technically during the Supergirl part of the crossover, so it doesn't technically count. So technically, this is only her second appearance in the Flash. Technically, it's her third appearance for the Arrowverse, but only second for the Flash. But nevertheless, maybe it's her. I kind of feel like that wouldn't be the case. I'm wondering who that person on Earth 3 is. I mean, to be fair, like as the show progresses, I'm learning more and more about speedsters. Like, the only speedsters I went into this show really knowing about is I knew about Wally and Impulse, and the only reason why I know about them is because of Young Justice. That's the only reason why I know about those two. So outside of them, I didn't really know the other speedsters. So any other speedsters I'm getting introduced to, it's because I'm hearing other people talk about things, as well as just people introduced in the show, or, maybe like a combination of it. Especially like all the villains, Reverse Flash, Zoom, Savitar. This show was my first introduction to them. So that's just kind of something. Nevertheless, so it does seem like she is kind of all on her. She's kind of a thing on her own. But I am curious to find out who this new speedster is that Jay is training. There's also the situation with the girl, like going back to her. She meets Caitlin and Harry in this episode, and she's like, "Oh my god, I'm so nervous. I'm having a meeting," and they're like, "Oh, good luck with your meeting." And she's like, "I hope it goes well," and she goes, "It did." And it's like, whoa, because she went all serious, because at first she's kind of like joking. She's like, oh, super hyper and nervous. And the moment they walk away, you see her like stop smiling, and it's like, oh, she went all serious mode. So it's like, why did she interact with them? Like, it seems like slowly but surely she's interacting with all of Team Flash. She already talked to Barry at his wedding. She talked to Cisco and Ralph, and now she's talking to Caitlin and Harry. I'm curious who's going to be the next people that she ends up talking to, and for what purpose, like I said, it plays more and more into the fact is, like, I theorize. I mean, to be fair, I kind of know who she is now. I won't say who she is. I know because when I was doing that video, I was randomly looking up a thumbnail. This is after I'd already uploaded the video. I kind of talked about this in the description of that video, but I kind of saw her name. I won't spoil it for you, but I saw her name, which kind of spoils things, so that's why I'm not trying to get too much into it. But I was like, oh, that's interesting. Granted, I still don't know this character's backstory, but it's like, I am wondering if she's got some, like, future thing going on. Like, I kind of know the answer, but I kind of don't. Like, I have a rough idea what her situation is. I just don't know exactly why and what she's up to. Like I said, I did not want to get spoiled. I wanted to find out when the show tells us who she is. But it's like she's going out of her way to meet everyone like this. And it's like, for what purpose? Is she trying to help them with something that's going to come? Is she potentially, like, is it like is she meant to be in this as an observer? Or is it going to be a situation of, like, she needs to be there to help situations play out the way they're supposed to? Or what? It's like, is she trying to make sure that everything is it one of those time things where it's like, oh, she was supposed to go back in time to make sure that certain things kind of played out the way they are? Is she some kind of, like, time officer where it's like, oh yeah, like, kind of, is she playing like a bit of a role like a legend where it's like, I got to make sure things play out in a certain way? So I don't know. I'm curious to see, like, what her whole situation is about, because she came at a very interesting time, just when Caitlin was talking about the whole, like, her and Frost situation. So was the whole point to interrupt that conversation, or what? Because she had brought up the fact is that, like, Caitlyn typically doesn't remember her whole situation anytime she switches over to Frost, but this time things were different. I don't know, maybe it's because of the whole Flashtime situation. Maybe that made things a little bit differently, but she actually remembered a conversation that Frost had with Barry where it was like, make sure that Caitlyn survives. And it's like, whoa, you've never really seemed like you cared before, but it's like, oh, you want Caitlyn to live. The argument could be made, it was like, well, you occupy the same body, so it's most likely you die, her dying would mean, Frost dying. But at the same time, it's like, well, Frost did and was like, oh yeah, make sure Caitlyn stays alive because I need, it's like, no, just make sure Caitlyn stays alive because Frost actually kind of cares about her. I do appreciate that because it seemed like it was kind of more like oh man, this is the dark side of Caitlyn. But it's like at this point in time, it's more like you see it more and more. It's like, this is just a separate person entirely. Like it's not like it's more like a firestorm situation where you have two people occupying the same body at the same time. It kind of works like that, in my opinion. So I thought that was kind of an interesting aspect to it. So I'm curious to see what kind of happens going forward with that. And then another storyline this episode was the fact is that this all had to deal, like Jesse and Harry. It seems like we finally find out what their big argument was about. And it's because Jesse wants Harry to talk about Jesse's mom. It's like Jesse's like, I've kind of dealt with it, and what helped me deal with it is talking about it. But she's like, for her, the thing is, Harry doesn't deal with it. He doesn't talk about it, and she wants him to talk about it. And it's like that's what kind of led to them kind of like being at odds. For her, it's just like she sees that her dad's been so angry subsequently since her mom died, and so it's like he's holding on to that anger, and it's what frustrates him the most. And it's kind of like she kind of makes the argument like you can't just use bad guys because there's always going to be a bad guy. There's always going to be a problem that needs to be solved, and it's not going to help you deal with your issues. But it's something Barry kind of pointed out to her. It's like you can't force somebody to deal with stuff because everyone kind of grieves and deals with things in their own way. Some ways are very destructive, but at the same time, you have to let someone kind of go about things their own way. Which she kind of was giving Harry this space, but then he was like, I can't say what I need to say. So he basically hooked the device up, make it so that she could hear his thoughts. Now, I don't know how to interpret that, whether it's supposed to be like, oh, Jessie was born a little bit after, like her mom died a little bit after Jessie was born. I don't know whether that's supposed to be implied, or was Jessie old enough to remember her mom? I don't know that whole situation. They might have talked about it in earlier seasons, but I don't remember. That's what I was kind of wondering. But it's like that, because to me that would kind of explain, like, I don't know. Because for Harry, he's just like, oh, when you have a love like that, it's just, I don't know. We never really got the full side of the conversation, which at the same time, I think is kind of okay because it should be something just between him and Jesse. I know, like, it's kind of a weird way to look at it, but I think character-wise, I think it's something that should only be between them. That's something that they can only understand as that family, So I don't know. It is nice to see that things are good between him and Jesse. Maybe we'll see a less cranky Harry going forward because of this whole breath of fresh air. I highly doubt it. I'm sure he's still going to be just as cranky, but still, very interesting development. But what's also interesting too is that basically this all was basically about eco-terrorism because basically the girl was about nuclear power and stuff like that kind of being a problem. So this was supposed to make people wake up. You were willing to kill lots and lots of people and destroy one city to prove your point, but that's kind of like fanatics for you. Like it's one thing to believe in one thing, but to go to such an extreme like that kind of just goes, yeah, you're just a shitty person. So that's that. But the question is, like, how did she find out the Argus had that? Which once again showed you Argus literally has their fingers and toes and everything. And that's something we still haven't cut back to. Because there's a whole aspect of the future that Zari comes from where Argus has that. Like, I feel like they're slowly tiptoeing towards that because this is the first time Argus has kind of popped up in the show in a while. We hear it from time to time on Arrow. I mean, it's still run by Lila, but I kind of feel like with the way things are in the future, like, I don't know, because that position, you kind of have to cross a lot of lines that you normally wouldn't want to, like, especially Lila. She's done a lot of things I'm sure she, in the past, wouldn't have been so all about, but it's like stuff that Amanda Waller was kind of like, seemed like she was okay with, but it's just, it comes with the job, So that's still an element of like, they get their little dabble in everything. I mean, to be fair, maybe they took that from someone and they were transporting and were going to dispose of it. Maybe it was supposed to be something they use on a rainy day. I don't know. You never really know with Argus. Top secret organization next to nothing about, so. But the whole point was, oh, maybe DeVoe leaked that information, but for what purpose, I mean, because if that was the case, like, why would he risk that? Because it would potentially put him in danger. I mean, I guess with his whole pocket dimension situation, he could pop in and pop out and be okay. So he's probably in this pocket dimension the whole time without having to worry about it. That was kind of playing a role into the episode too, because like Barry was trying to learn how to get faster so that he could catch DeVoe, like in case DeVoe decides to ever pop into his pocket dimension and then pop out. It has shown that, like, you know, when they look at it on the map and everything, it's like, oh, wow, he's been at this for a while, for like 3 years. That basically he, ever since getting, like, coming up with this plan, he's been putting it in action. Everything has been leading up to him getting those 12 people in that bus to become metahumans. Everything has been leading up to that for the past 3 years. So that no wonder he is so far ahead of them, because he's been planning this out to every minute detail, probably even throwing in some contingencies. They can, like, oh, even if things played out, like, because there are a few things that have caught him off guard, because it's like, wow, they found out a lot sooner, but still was never a worry for him, because I'm still thinking so far ahead that even with these contingencies in place, I have 100% different directions I can go from this one contingency, and then I have other contingencies upon those contingencies, so on and so forth, type of thing. So but then immediately my brain has been like, it still goes back to the Speed Force. Like, there's this whole situation, like everything that Barry got out of the Speed Force, that's got to play a role in it, and the Speed Force itself. Because maybe DeVoe is going to try and capture some of the Speed Force's energy. It's probably some of the rawest, most powerful energy you could probably capture and probably try and absorb into himself. Like, the enlightenment he's trying to accomplish, I'm still kind of like up in the air about what that could all mean. But the Speed Force knows that Barry's not in there anymore, and even him and Jay was like, oh, what are we going to do about the Speed Force? It's like, well, that's a situation we'll have to deal with when the time comes. Like, the Speed Force came after Barry because of what he did, and it's like, now that it knows, like, oh, you're not in prison anymore, we're going to come after you, because that spear did distract it long enough. So the question is, what will happen now that it knows that he's free? So we will just have to wait and see. What will kind of be the consequences for Barry doing what he did? Like, will there be any or not? Seemed like the only option at the time, so we'll see. Like I said, a fantastic episode. So excited to see what goes down in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Black Lightning. A lot of stuff we have to unpackage about this episode. Going forward, the whole aspect of, like, Anissa being a part of this now. It's all out there in the open. And now you have the difference of opinions, because obviously Lynn's kind of against this, but now you also have even Jeff being against it. Because it's one thing if he's putting his own life in danger, but of course he doesn't want his daughter, no matter if she has powers or not. I don't want my baby girl going out there, like, fighting crimes. Like, if that's a choice that has to be made for Freeland, I'll be the one to make that choice. And obviously Lynn, she's already had this conversation about Jeff. She doesn't want the same thing to happen to Anissa, but Jeff is kind of on board and like, no. We can't let this kind of go too far out of hand. But even Lynn, because she finally broke it down to Anissa, because, like, they were both kind of like, Jeff was kind of hard on Anissa and being like, no, you can't do this because you don't know what you do, what your actions have consequences, and the fact of the matter is what you do can get people mixed up in it, which, Jeff even calls himself out on it later in the episode, being like, oh, I'm a bit of a hypocrite with some of the stuff I say, kind of do as I say, not as I do. It's the type of situation. And even Lynn kind of puts it out there like, oh yeah, the big downside of being a superhero, you kind of don't get to have that happy ending. Essentially, like, your whole life is about helping other people get their happiness. Doesn't mean you'll necessarily get yours, because there's so many aspects of your life you have to sacrifice, and it has a toll on all your relationships. And even Anissa's like, oh, wait, that's why you and Dad broke up? And it's like, yeah, that played a big role in it. Because that's not something that's easy to just overcome. And he even kind of puts it out there for Anissa. It's like, once you have this life, it's like, what have you done lately? You haven't had a social life. You haven't really been on any dates. Last relationship you were in kind of crashed and burned a little bit. So it's just kind of like, you get so focused on trying to save the world, you kind of let other things slip in the wayside. So, but even Anissa's kind of like, no, like, I want to do what I can to save, Freeland, and all I care about right now is, like, other people's happiness. She says that now, but then there's a combination of things she, still hasn't come her way. It's like the whole secret identity thing. That means lying to the people that are most important to you, to keep them safe, and balancing that, Your dad's done a good enough job where he hadn't had to balance that in such a long time. Like, for 9 years, he never had to worry about balancing that, but now he kind of does. So I don't know, it's just, I do appreciate like that Lynn has like slowly over the course, like she has always had her opinion about the way things are, but now she's slowly kind of transitioned over to kind of like, okay, Nissa, I want you to do this, but I want you to be safe. So Gamby's building her suit. She wants Jefferson to train her because it's like she's super stubborn. Like, you know, for her, it's like Anissa, our baby girl, has always been super stubborn. And the fact of the matter is, like, even if we tell her not to do something, what's she going to do? She's going to go behind her backs and do it anyway. At least this way, she'll have you out there training her as well as kind of having her back in this whole situation. So then on top of all of this, there's the whole Gamby situation, because it's like still trying to understand what is, like, it seems like, like I brought up before, it seems like Gamby is kind of creating, like, he created a perfect system of like, yes, there's a little bit of crime that goes down, but the fact of the matter is it's reasonable to an extent where like you let people kind of take control to a certain extent without really going too overboard. They get a little piece of it, they get a piece of the pie without, you know, and kind of keep a certain order to things without letting things get a little too chaotic, not letting things go a little too good, kind of keeping things in some kind of like medium of sorts, a little bit of a balance. It's kind of what Gamby's all about. And he's basically like, we need to take out Tobias. He's showing up too much. He's supposed to be dead. He's making too much of a spectacle, which even Lady Eve is behind that. But Gamby crossed the line, even going as far as killing Joey, which is kind of interesting because early in the episode he talked about Jefferson. He's like, oh, you know, he's like, oh, the reason why, like, because Jefferson obviously is picking it up. It's like, okay, you're lying about something because you knew about Tobias. It's because there's no way you could find out all this stuff and not know about Tobias. But then it's like Gamby finally admits, it's like, well, I did it to protect you, which I always thought was from the very beginning. I was like, oh, obviously it's that. He doesn't want you to cross that line. But now it's like, no, he has other motives. That plays a small part in it. But even then, it's like, how, and even Jefferson's like, how can I trust you? It's like, I don't know either. Like, how can you trust him? How can you trust that even a fraction of it is about protecting your family, and it's not about protecting his own self-interest? Maybe his self-interest and the family's protection kind of coincides, because maybe by making this deal with Lady Eve and the others, like whoever this group is known as the Blackboard, who seems to be kind of like the upper management, that basically the people that Lady Eve, she's a part of this group. I would assume it's kind of like, because she ended up being like, Lady Eve is a councilwoman, so maybe there are other people kind of on that the city council and stuff like that too. Maybe it's people higher up like the mayor and stuff like that. Nevertheless, the only way he could keep the Pierce family safe, it's like, okay, I mean, what if we end up finding out something super messed up, like he's the one that sold Alvin, Jeff's dad, out to Tobias, you know? It's like one sacrifice needed to be made so that the entire family will stay left alone. So it's like they've been left alone now because Gamby was like, okay, their protection is secured, and you get my help to kind of build the infrastructure to everything that you have, because he refers to it as an ecosystem. So poor Joey. And it also at the same time shows you that, you know, Gamby is no pushover either. Not only is he the tech dude, he's also very capable, because he took down all of Joey's guards and Joey himself without hesitation, like took him down, left that little box on it, turns out white ash in it, lit a little reminder from Lady Eve. So it's kind of interesting seeing Tobias kind of take it hard, but I guess him and Joey, like Joey is his right-hand man, but it was just kind of interesting that it kind of hit him that hard, because especially because it seemed like he was kind of threatening to kill Joey before, because the whole failing to tail damn black lightning type of thing. But then again, I guess it's just kind of like one of those, you know, you're one of my henchmen, so I'm going to give you that threat, but maybe that's just because him and Joey have going back a ways or something like that. Then there's also the whole aspect of cover-ups, which plays like a huge part in this episode. You have the cover-up of like David Poe, the editor. Apparently he died, a car accident, quote unquote. There's the guys that broke into the lab of Lynn's, and it's like, well, they're dead now, mainly because Eve sent some cleaners to kind of take them out, so that if they get arrested, you don't have to worry about them talking. It kind of removes the problem, because they were never supposed to go after Eve in the first place. But it seems, I mean, not go after Lynn in the first place, but it seems like that wasn't her decision. It seems like that might have been Tobias's. Just, it's kind of interesting, because it's like there isn't like 100% a coerced, like cohesive like system here, because apparently, because I thought Tobias was behind the green light. Even he's like, where the hell is this green light coming from? Like, I guess that's why he wanted to talk to Lady Eva. Like, I guess she's the one that's pushing the green light, someone else is, because he ended up fighting the guy's like, oh, he's got to be on something. It's like this green light. It's like, oh, I thought you were 100% behind that, but it seems that's not the case. So So is Lady Eve behind it? I guess not. I mean, she's dead now, so not unless there's someone else on the blackboard who's connected to that. So we'll have to wait and see. But there's that, and then finally you had the whole situation with Lady Eve. That basically, because Tobias can't make a move. Like, he wants to get rid of Lady Eve, but he can't. Because if he gets rid of her, it's going to blow back on him. So what he does, the moment they had those high-tech guns, I'm like, whoa, what are they doing with those high-tech guns? Where did he get them from? I'm like, oh, that's so crazy. I was like, why would they? And it hits me. It's like, they're like lightning. I was like, of course. Kill Lady Eve and make it look like Black Lightning did it. So this way he can take Lady Eve's spot, fill that void, and he can get rid of a problem without having to take care of it himself, technically. I almost saw Eve almost had it because she took two of the dudes down. Like, her bodyguards got killed, but she's like, I got it done. And then the guy came out the casket. I was like, oh, missed the last one. So I was like, that sucks big time. I'm not too surprised because it's like, just because, well, sadly, Black Lightning in this whole situation isn't the first superhero to kind of get framed for something like that. But nevertheless, it's just also like, I knew it was coming because everything was set up to kind of, like, it hasn't happened. Like, I'm pretty sure probably within the next episode or so, the whole Khalil situation is going to be going extra hard. They're going to be using him as motivation because it's like, you already have Henderson being like, okay, you went too far this time, because everything, like, the only person that they know that's like that is Black Lightning. To be fair, there's the whole Anissa situation. Like, Henderson had asked Black Lightning about it, but Black Lightning was like, I don't know about some lady with powers to destroying a Confederate statue. It's kind of interesting because it's like, Black Lightning must be the first of his kind, because like it's in particular in Freeland, because it ain't like no one else is talking about any other superhero. That's why I'm like so curious to find out like where this takes place in the whole Arrowverse situation. Is it on a different Earth? Is it actually on Earth 1? Because it'd be kind of interesting if it was on Earth 1, because that would literally make it so that Supergirl is the only one that doesn't take place on a different Earth. So it's just, I don't know, just become an interesting thing. Like, I don't know, it's something they're probably not even really worried about. There's probably been references to stuff that make you go, oh, that definitely makes it part of Earth 1, but I don't know. For right now, they're probably not too concerned about connecting it. It's just like, hey, let it be on its own thing for now, kind of stand on its own 2 feet, not really have to worry about the connectivity, kind of like a MCU, or in this particular case, the Arrowverse or the DCEU type of situation. But nevertheless, that's kind of been going on a tangent. But like, the point is, like, for him immediately jump to Black Lightning, to be fair, is kind of what he does, but it's like he's never crossed that line before. But it's like, oh, now it's just like, oh, you want Tobias, so obviously, like, you're willing to do whatever it takes. Well, what would make you think he'd go after Lady Eve? Like, I don't get what would make you think he'd jump to that, considering the fact is that no one knows about her, like, bad guy ties, I mean, this is going to go back even more, like Tobias is going to hit him even harder because Black Lightning came after him, and because bullets got deflected and they ricocheted, it ended up hitting Tori and Tobias, and sadly Tori ended up dying. I'm surprised. I guess there was nothing he can do with a bullet situation. I thought maybe he could use his powers and kind of like pull the bullet out, or just kind of keep her heart beating with his powers, but I guess with the way the circumstances are, it's like his powers probably can't be used in that sense. Like, I mean, probably with where the bullet is and everything, it's probably not possible for him to kind of pull it out with his electricity. And even if he kept, it's probably like there's too many circumstances. Plus, the fact of the matter is, he's not a doctor. He would have to like keep her alive long enough to probably take her to Lynn or to a medical facility. But it's like, no one's there to corroborate what he did. Like, he has an alibi because while that was happening, he was fighting Tobias. But the only person that could be his alibi is Tobias and the group, and they're not going to say Jack Squad. So that's going to motivate Tobias even more to get like Khalil to say what he needs to destroy Black Lightning's reputation. Like, we're already slowly approaching. Like, people are already not going to trust him. It's like from hero to villain, just like that. I mean, that's just kind of the hero story. But he's going to get kind of what is the word I'm looking for? There's going to be even more of a mob mentality, especially because people looked at him as a hero, like the one who can save Freeland, and it's like, oh, nope, he's just as terrible as everyone else. So, and then also there's like the final biggest thing that's kind of like, wait, what? Is the fact is that Lala's alive again, and it's like, wait, what? Didn't Tobias kill you? What's up with that? And then like you see like a ghostly Lawanda being like, oh, like the Book of Resurrection, and she turns into like smoke, and then she turns into like a tattoo on his body, and it's like, wait, what is that about? Is that what Lady Eve was up to with like with all those bodies she was in, like embalming or like removing liquid from or whatever? I mean, I would just assume that it was kind of like the whole like, but like I said, it was kind of a weird situation because it seemed like those bodies were alive. So what was she up to? How is this possible? Like, Was he injected with whatever this is that Alvin was looking into about all these different like missing kids and stuff like that? Was Lala infected with that too? And what's up with that? Does it mean he has powers now too? Is this supposed to be connected to what Lady Eve was talking to Tobias about like, oh, the white magic powder? Is that, I thought that's what that was kind of representing when it kind of turned into like when Lawanda turned into kind of like the mist and turned into a tattoo on his body. Like, is that supposed to represent all the people you've killed or ghost? Like, I don't know. Is that supposed to be a manifestation of his power? I don't know what that is. That's crazy. Right off the bat, we were just kind of going like, oh, think you got this one enemy. It's like, oh, there's like a whole other situation happening here too. Because so far, like to a certain extent, like everything's kind of been grounded to an extent. Like I said, because currently Black Lightning is the only one with powers, with the exception of Tobias, because it seems like whatever anti-aging stuff that kind of gives him superhuman strength to a certain extent, like. I don't know, because the question is too, like, why was he in a hotel room? Because the last time we saw him, it was like Tobias like strangling him. So is that part of the plan? Is this something else entirely? Like, we will just have to wait and see. I have no idea what that could represent. Like I said, I'm curious to see where this all takes us. You know, like I said, Black Lightning is going to be looked at as a villain going forward. It's like, what does that mean for Anissa when she's working with him? Will she be automatically villainized as well? How will he go about clearing his name? What's Gambi going to do in this situation? Because his one ally was Lady Eve, and now that she's kind of taken care of, is there anyone else on the board who's connected to Gambi, or was she his only connection? And it's like, what will he be working with, you know, Jeff to take Tobias down now, even more so now, because like, you know, maybe he might come clean because he has no reason not to tell Jeff everything now. I don't know. This whole situation, really quickly, I want to bring up, it's kind of interesting because I think this is the quickest we've ever gotten from superhero to sidekick in any show so far. Like, it's taken everyone a long time to kind of go from like superhero to sidekick, because like even take Barry for example, it took he had all the rest of the Team Flash, but he never had anyone with powers, because Cisco didn't get his powers until, well, I mean, his powers developed in season 1, but they didn't really kick in until like season 2, right? Roy didn't pop up until season 2. Be fair, he had Diggle and Felicity, but Diggle wasn't working like that to that extent, and like Spartan at that point in time, was he? I'm pretty sure he wasn't. So it wasn't. I think Roy was like his first like Roy / Arsenal was his first sidekick. Supergirl, even technically at this point in time, well, I guess Mon-El is his thing. She has to one. And the Legends are just kind of like a package deal, so, but it's just kind of interesting that we immediately got to that. I mean, to be fair, his case is a little bit different because his quote-unquote sidekick, his partner in this particular case, I guess partner would be the better word, because I'm sure, like, people who refer to as sidekicks, you know, in these cases, like, you know, like the Robins and such, whichever Robin you want to, you know, canonically stick with, whichever person is your Robin, hashtag that's my Robin. That's not canon, that's not my canon, whatever the case may be. I don't know when to shut up, because I like to go on stupid tangents. Like, the point is, like, I guess, you know, sidekicks don't want to be referred to as sidekicks, they just want to be heroes, they want to be partners. So, I'm just curious, like Black Lightning's situation is a little bit different, because it's like, oh, it's your daughter that's your partner, so I don't know. And especially because the conversation also comes up as like, maybe we need to get Jen tested too. It's like, oh god, she's already tough enough to deal with. Can you imagine her with powers too? It's like, ugh. I'm very interested to see, you know, where all of this takes us in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good